May the light of this chalice give light and warmth to our community, when we are joyful and when we despair. And may we feel the warmth spread from our circle to wider and wider circles, until all know they belong to the one circle of life.
Please rise. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Good morning. My name is Amy Brock, and I'm the Director of Religious Exploration for Children and Youth. And it's our time for all ages. So if you are a young person or young at heart, you're invited to come and join me on the rug for a story this morning. And while you're coming, I'll let you know that this month's theme for our Soul Matters exploration experience is liberating love. And so, as our friends are finding their way down, maybe think about a way that you've experienced love in your life. Did anybody think of a really fun way that they have experienced love that you really, really want to share? And think of something that makes you feel love. Looks like we have some squishmallows with us today. Squishmallows make me feel loved. Woo.
All right.
So many things. Okay, well, as we explore our story today, maybe you will think of something that has brought love to your life. Our story is called A Lamp in Every Corner. I'm going to ask a question in the middle, so I hope someone can help me answer it. Many years ago in the land of Transylvania, there was a village of small wooden houses with dark shingled roofs. The people in the village were of the Unitarian religion, and they wanted a church of their own. They wanted a church set on a hillside. So the people in that village worked really hard to build their church. They built the walls and the windows, and they made a roof, and they installed the doors. Then they put a bell in their tower, and they put lampstands for oil lamps inside because this village had no electricity. At the end of the day, when their building was finished, all the people stood back to admire it. "We will eat now," said an elder in the village, because everyone was very hungry after a day's hard work. "And later that night, we will come back and have a worship service." So the people in the village left. They went home to eat food, but as they were leaving, a child noticed that something was missing from their building. They noticed that there were tall iron lampstands along the wall, but no lamps for them. That was strange, because if they were coming back that night, the church would be dark. What do you think they were going to do? They could. That would probably take a long time to put electricity in the whole village, though. Any other ideas? Yeah. But they're coming back that night, and they don't have any lamps in the building. Any ideas? They could use candles. That's an idea, yeah? Yeah, find some lights. They could put a fire in their building. You could find some fireflies. These are some really good ideas.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you what they did.
Lights that sort of fireflies make, and you can have the glow sticks for like Halloween. Have you ever seen
Glow sticks. They could find glow sticks. Oh my goodness, there are so many ways to light a building. I'm glad if our lights ever go out. We have some good ideas. Okay.
We're ready.
So these people already had a plan. The light will come from the church's people, said the child's father. You will see. And when the child and their father arrived that evening, it was dark outside. But as they looked out from the church hill, they saw little lights coming up the hill, like little bright ants. And as the people were coming up the hill, they each had a lantern with them. And when they came into the church, they put the lantern on the lampstands. And soon, every corner of the church was bright because of everyone's light. And as they left that evening, every family picked up their lamp and they took it with them. And then the church was dark again. That night, as the child got ready for bed, they had a big question for their parents. They asked, what happens if someone's light goes out and there's no way to light the church with that light? It won't, said their mother. Their mom said, the light in the lamps will always burn. The years passed and the child grew up. They kept their lamp polished and they cleaned it and filled it with oil. And just like their mother said, it never went out. And through the years, the light from all of the lantern flames of the people of that church never went out. And the love that they carried in their hearts continued to grow as they came and went, just like their light as it came and went too. So take a moment and think about what it would feel like to have light in your heart. We do have light in our heart, but think about like what that would feel like for you. Maybe it feels like a warm fire. Maybe it feels like a fuzzy worm. I don't know. Think about what the light in your heart feels like. And we're going to hold that light in our hearts with us today as our young friends go to RE and as our grown-ups explore here. Yeah.
Before we do, I'd like to invite over our friend to show you all his instruments. Darin Gentry, come on over here. This is Darin Gentry. He has been playing his instruments for over 25 years. He learned in Brevard, North Carolina. We share some friends in common back from where I'm from in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And I will tell you that my friends who know Darin and know old-time Appalachian music will tell you that Darin is amongst the best fiddle players you will ever hear in your entire life. Amen to that. You didn't know that, but they do. Yeah. So what's this one called here?
This is a banjo.
Nope. All right. Anybody heard of a banjo before? Yeah.
Seen a banjo up close?
my music teacher has a banjo
She does.
and a lot of ukuleles. A lot of ukuleles.
Okay.
Do you want to? Where'd you
Yeah.
get your banjo, Darin?
Well, this was built by a friend of mine that lives in Wisconsin. Yeah, but the most important thing about this banjo is it doesn't have a back on it. So that's the old time way they used to make banjos a long time ago, 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they used to play with a different technique, and you'll see the old time technique that I'll play here in a few minutes.
Yeah. So it's different than a 5-string banjo. Will you show us just a little bit, show these kids a little bit what the difference would be?
Yeah, so we play like, it's called fall hammer. And that's all about the rhythm right there.
All right.
As
Fantastic.
opposed to 3-finger bluegrass banjo, which would be kind of like that.
Two very different sounds. How about your fiddle? Will you grab your fiddle real quick and show that off to us? Now, Darin, what's the, can you give us some insight on the age-old question of what is the difference between a violin and a fiddle?
Yeah, there's a lot of differences actually. $3,000 to $4,000 is one difference. Violin has strings, fiddle has strings. That's all I can say
About
here.
it. All right, yeah. And where'd you get this fiddle from?
This fiddle comes from my hometown, Brevard, North Carolina. Actually, it was built in the Czech Republic, I think, but it's not as old as it looks.
Yeah.
But it's got 25 years on it.
25 years? All right. Well, fantastic. Well, we're going to say our children's covenant before our kids head out to religious exploration classes. In this place, I am kind. In this place, I am loving. In this place, I am a friend to all animals and people. In this place, I am loved. We all please rise and make our arch for our kids. And it is a new month as well as a new year. And so we have a new exit song for us to sing the children out to. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open.
Good morning. My name is Chayla Sloper, and I have today's announcements. I'm the Congregational Life Facilitator, and Happy New Year as well. Today we have several things happening right after the service. The men's, and hello everybody on Zoom. We do count you as part of this fellowship, and we're glad that everyone has gathered today, wherever we are located, to be here together. If you're new at the service on Zoom, we do have a virtual visitor card that will be dropped into the chat. Let us know that you're here, and if you'd like to sign up for our communications, we send out a weekly email. That's how you would do that as well. So yes, today, the Men's Fellowship Steering Team meets in the conference room at 11:30. So if you're a man and you would like to not only be involved in what's going on, but might want to be involved in the planning and things like that, or just to find out what's going on, you're welcome to join that gathering. The monthly meeting would be happening later this month. Also today, we have a newcomer welcome in the library. If you're brand new and would like to, you just have some questions about what makes this congregation tick, or how to get involved, basic things about Unitarian Universalism, that'll be in the library, the fireside room, basically right after service. And then we also have at 11:45, we have class number 1 of the Membership Matters Path to Membership curriculum. Now this is going to be an hour-and-a-half commitment because we want to just get a big chunk of information about why Unitarian Universalism matters. So that's at 11:45. There are many who have signed up for the Membership Matters classes, and I'm looking forward to seeing you there. And if anybody else would like to stick around for an hour and a half and find out why Unitarian Universalism matters, you're welcome to come as well. So we talk about a lot of matters here, and we do mention soul matters. So this is what the soul matters packet looks like if it is printed, but it's delivered electronically, and there are a lot of hyperlinks for resources on the internet. And as Amy said, the theme this month is the gift of liberating love. If you're interested to just even take a look at the packet, possibly for personal reflection, I'll have this at the kiosk. And there might be one other small group starting later this month. I'm still in conversation with the facilitator. But otherwise, we have small groups that begin in September. So Soul Matters, the gift of liberating love. Good news, the coffee pot in our Fanny Farmer kitchen was fixed by none other than our facilities manager, Parker Delling. So yeah, I know. So we've had some leakage and some problems, but he's got skills, I tell you. This Thursday, our Gen XYZ group is going to be meeting here at not at 11 p.m. It's Thursday the 11th at 7 p.m. This will be a deeper discussion about living intentionally. What I know, since I'm almost compulsive about checking the forecast, is that we have big snow forecast for the middle of the week. So stay tuned, Gen XYZers, and you may get a notice of let's brave it or let's wait. So also, here's another fun thing, line dancing. This Friday, Marty Rudolph has arranged for a teacher of line dancing to come here at 5 p.m. It costs $20. Now, this is an auction item. Every year we have an auction, and people sign up for things and they pay at that time. If you were not able to purchase this at the auction, you can come Friday and line dance your heart out. And that's $20, cash or check appreciated. Just come, and that, again, come at 5. The last fun thing that I want to talk about is our variety show and spaghetti dinner. And the reason why I'm telling you now is that if you want to dust off your fiddle or your drums or your tap shoes, you can do that. We're scheduled for February 2nd. It's a Friday night. I'll have a sign up in the ACE this week, and whether you want to perform or just want to help, there are lots of ways to be involved. And that's one of the really fun things that we do together as a congregation. We kind of let our hair down. And in fact, the second half of the show will be open to your discretion. The first half of the show is going to be for kids. So you follow my meaning. Okay, so with that, I'm going to say blessings not only on today, but let's shoot an arrow to midnight, December 31st, and let the blessings meet us along the way.
Y'all just clap for announcements. That's amazing. Y'all are in a good mood today. If you're clapping for announcements, that's great. Well, each month, on the first Sunday of the month, we give our offering away to a community organization or community effort that shares our values. This Sunday, we're sharing it with the Environmental Center. So I'd like to invite Lindsay Hardy up to tell us a little bit about this project around energy that the Environmental Center is working on.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Lindsay Hardy. I use she, her pronouns, and I work at the Environmental Center here in Central Oregon. Is anybody here familiar with the Environmental Center or work we've done before? All right. Well, thank you so much for your engagement over our last 35 years. I'm really excited about where we're headed in the upcoming years as well. So it really means a lot to me that you've invited me into your beautiful space this morning to share some time to not only talk about our work, but this project in particular. I'm going to jump all the way back to 2008, and hopefully I can make this connection for all of you. But in 2008, I was able to attend the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Poznan, Poland, where I had the opportunity to meet a gentleman from the island nation of Tuvalu, who is expected to be one of the first nations to disappear from climate change. And he was mapping what everybody in his country was going to miss most when their country disappeared. And so while there was a lot of sadness in this conversation and this project he was working on, there was also a lot of hope. He was there at this conference to inspire people to make change so that he and his people from his country could face a brighter future. And so I think to say that that really lit a fire for the reason I'm doing the work now that I'm doing, I think would really be an understatement. I think it was a really profound moment and foundational of connecting the grief of looking at what's happening across the world in the face of climate change, but also looking at the opportunities for hope and what we can do as stewards of this environment to actually make some positive change. And so I think looking at what we are doing now, fast forwarding through a lot of years that now I don't have time to make all these connections of how I've learned and grown in this work, we are now looking at what we can do in our community to actually bring some of the power to actually make changes and connect with folks who haven't been engaged in this conversation before, who are the most impacted by the changing climate here in our community, and also looking at what new ideas can we bring to actually start a new conversation about what it looks like to use and produce energy here in our community. And so we are launching this effort that we're calling Deschutes Energy Future this year. We're still recruiting for a couple more weeks for our leadership team, which is going to be a whole new group of folks to lead and spearhead this conversation. So we'll look at how are we using energy in our homes? What can we do differently? What are the burdens to actually implementing some of these really large-scale changes that we need to help folks stay safe in the face of a changing climate, but also be able to make an impact? And I think as we are doing this work, one of the really exciting things that we're hoping will be an example of other things that can come out of these types of conversations is we're launching a free home energy assessment program that'll help to reach out to folks who have been traditionally underserved by incentives and programs to help folks save energy on their utility bills. And I think this program is really an example of the types of ideas and collaboration and partnerships that can come out of some really grassroots planning on the community scale. And so that program will have a revolving loan fund that we are working on creating that'll be community funded and will invest in folks who haven't been met with the same level of investment from utilities and other sources in the past. And so I hope that you'll be able to join us in these conversations. We're looking at ideas from anybody, young and old, and experts and folks who just have experience living in homes and using energy. These homes will have electricity. We're talking about the electric energy, but also the energy you have inside yourselves too. So maybe we'll also source some really great ideas like lighting our homes with fireflies from other folks. That was a really special moment. I'm glad I got to be part of that and see how fun and awesome your congregation really is. So I will be around for a little bit after the service. I would love to meet more of you and hear what your hopes and dreams are for making all of this work more equitable and accessible for the community and your ideas. And I would love to see you at some of our community gatherings in the future as we talk about what all of this can look like for our community. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Lindsay. The interdependent web, respect for the interdependent web of which we are all a part. This is one of our Unitarian Universalist values. Our environmental justice team here at this fellowship just met last week, and they're conceiving of new and exciting ways that our congregation can engage environmental work in the coming year. But as for right now, in this moment, you can add to this good work by contributing to our greater community collection. If the ushers would please come down while Paula plays. Is this an improv piece, Paula, or is this something?
This is one of my pieces called Dreaming and Sounds.
Dreaming and Sounds? Dreaming and Sounds. This is one of Paula's original works. This congregation shares our joys and our sorrows and our gratitudes with each other each week. If you've got a joy or a sorrow in your heart you'd like to light a candle for, please feel free to do so at any time while I'm reading our written joys and sorrows. These forms are located on the kiosk out in our gathering hall, and we invite you to write a joy or a sorrow or gratitude on them anytime that you would like to share that with our wider community. So Mark and Marilyn Steinberg are trusting that Jim and Becky Dabrowski made it safely to Salinas? It's been 6 years, y'all. I still don't know how to say all these Oregon town names. Is it Oregon? It's California. These West Coast town names. Very grateful for their friendship. Robin Johnson shares that finally reading Enlightenment Now. It speaks of the values of enlightenment, reason and sympathy, and perhaps more so, science, fallibility, empathy, and reminds us that these experiments succeeded and continue to succeed, but we need to recommit to them. And to me, that is what Eunice is. So joyful and grateful for our community and for our values. And this one's from Leora on behalf of all of us on the staff here, and that's a joy. If it's your birthday in the room, raise your hand. Nolan? Nolan, is your birthday? Yeah, it's your birthday, Nolan. Is there somebody else? I was just, we're going to sing happy birthday for Nolan. I just didn't know if you were going to be singing happy birthday for anybody else, too. Anybody else besides Nolan have a birthday today? January? Well, that's a lot of names. I don't think we could get them all in there. So let's just sing happy birthday to Nolan. Nolan, is that okay? That's all right. So Nolan is one of our capable and able AV folks. He's back there at the desk with Danny. So let's sing happy birthday to Nolan, shall we? Yeah. Do you know how to play happy birthday, Paula? Dig it. Happy to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Nolan. Happy birthday to you. How old? I'm not gonna ask. I learned that lesson the hard way, Chris. You don't ask me how old I am. Well, from laughter, let's take a deep breath. I'll invite us to shift just a little bit to find that breath inside of us, to find ourselves here in this room, aware of our bodies, aware of being alive, grateful for being alive. I'll offer a spoken prayer this morning, followed by a time of silent meditation shared together. Spirit of life and Spirit of love, we have witnessed in our lives a loud, exuberant love. And this love challenges us. It is here, right now, among us, inside us, all around us. A love so loud, indifferent to anything else other than love expanding. This love invites you into your own heart. Drink and know that others like that love, that others experience this love that always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. This out loud love makes no secret that its desire is to set you free, to set us all free. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, come to us and bring everyone with you. We are giving birth to love over and over in every new moment. So give us the courage, the inspiration to love out loud, to love loudly, to love boldly, to share our joy and our compassion with others, to let those folks in our lives know how much we appreciate them. Let us love out loud. Let us love boldly. And let us love bravely.
Thank you.
It feels good, doesn't it? Being right all the time. Doesn't it feel good? I mean, there's something satisfying about being so right all the time. Raise your hand if you think you're right more often than not. Right? Otherwise, you probably wouldn't make those decisions, right? And what's amazing is that everyone thinks that despite how many people are wrong all the time. They think they're right all the time too. Now, isn't that tricky? I'm reminded of this at this time of year for sure, as the election and political cycle is beginning to ramp up, and I start feeling those feelings inside of myself, righteous anger, not just regular anger, righteous anger, the one that makes me feel good and justified and correct. And just yesterday, sometimes I can feel angry. Yesterday was January 6th, an anniversary in our country, a hard anniversary in our country. And in this time of politics and at this time of year, it is very clear in this political season that we live in a country divided. A country divided almost in half, with both sides having no idea how the other side can believe such absurd and ridiculous things. It is a sweet feeling, that feeling of feeling superior. There's only something a little sweeter than feeling superior, and that's feeling superior in a group of other people who share your opinions about what it is you feel superior about. Such affirmation, such back-patting, don't we know, aren't we all good? My colleague, the Reverend Darcy Lane, writes, there is such a strong drive in us to think of our enemies as monsters. There's a kind of rush that courses through us when we boo at the other football team, when we make a coarse joke about the leader of the other political party. Don Bison argues that this is partly because of a sense of unity that it gives us against the enemy. We strengthen our own sense of identity when we know who we are not and who we are against. When we make the other guy into an enemy, part of the reason is that feels so good is because we finally have someone to carry that part of our own shadow. It makes us feel clean and righteous to externalize our shadow onto other people. We do live in a divided nation, and it's easy to make monsters and enemies out of those who believe other than ourselves. And it's hard then, as people who profess a faith of love, to move into a space of loving our enemies. What's the name of this service is loving your gosh-darn-stinkin', good-for-nothing, dumb-headed enemies, right? We can love them, but we might have a list of adjectives on the way to that love. And it's interesting, last week here we did a question box service where folks just wrote down questions on note cards, and we picked them all up and we answered, just kind of threw out some answers in real time. Out of all those cards, when I went back and looked after we were done, the same question kept coming up over and over on those cards. How do I love others who believe so differently than me? How do I love that hard family relative? How do I love people when I feel that their actions are wrong? Loving someone when we don't understand or don't agree with their views is very hard, and it gets in the way of the sense of unity. There are other ways to feel unity with others than disparaging someone, so we will feel that we are with a team and not on another team. As Krista Tippett from On Being podcast and show writes, we seem to be losing any connective tissue for engaging at all on a human level. Across ruptures of disagreement, across political spectrum, many increasingly turn to journalism not for knowledge, but to confirm the individual pre-existing points of view, and that's on the left and the right. What we once called the red state, blue state divide is now more like two parallel universes where understandings of plain fact are no longer remotely aligned. This leads to a diminishing sense of the humanity of those who think and live differently than we do. This leads to a diminishing of the sense of the humanity of those who think and live differently than we do. We know this is that first dangerous move to dehumanize another person, to consider them less than, to consider one group more whole, more human. This is a dangerous, dangerous area. And yet the reality is that we are all together, humanity. We are all in this together, society as a whole. Humanity as a whole shares one fate. We deserve to live in peace and love and joy, and we don't get there by demonizing any other person, even if we find their actions or beliefs horrifying and distasteful, because to do so, to demonize, and to cause someone to diminish their sense of humanity, is to distance ourselves from the truth, the utter truth of our interdependence and our mutuality. And so into this space, we insert love in this fellowship. Love we proclaim as truly the relational answer, the difficult answer sometimes, but we believe here that our love impacts lives, that our love has a real effect in the world around us because we have seen this to be true. Unitarian Universalism, the Universalist side of this religious tradition, started off as a theological claim about life after death. Universal salvation, that there is no way an all-loving God could damn any of God's own people to eternal punishment and torment. That is simply an idea that is inconsistent with love in any ultimate sense. Universalism was a claim for whatever destiny any of us is meant for is the destiny that all of us are meant for. And we, as our Universalist ancestors would say, that is being reunited with God's love, all of us in the end. In the 20th century, this theology shifted a little bit, and this afterlife affirmation became instead a claim about what it is we hope for in this world, a beloved community, here and now. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny. So whatever lines that we consciously or intentionally or unconsciously draw between us and them, enemy and friend, good and bad, worthy and unworthy, all of that is secondary to the idea that we are interconnected and that we are interdependent. This love that Dr. Martin Luther King would speak of, he would go so far as to call it a disinterested love, because it's the sort of love that doesn't care if it's loved back. It's the love that will go to any lengths to restore community. A love that doesn't care, that is not invested if it is returned or not. A love that simply wants to love in the world, a bold love and a courageous love. Howard Thurman wrote some words on this. Here is a mystery. If sweeping through the door of my heart there moves continually a genuine love for you, it bypasses all your hate and all your indifference and gets through to you at your center. You are powerless to do anything about it. You may keep alive in devious ways the fires of your bitter heart, but they cannot get through to me. Underneath the surface of all the tension, something else is at work. It is utterly impossible for you to keep another from loving you. It sounds subversive, doesn't it? You can't stop me from loving you, but it's true. No one can stop you from loving them. Isn't that beautiful and amazing and challenging and wonderful? And hard to love other people sometime. It's one of the most classic quotes from that good teacher of justice and peace and love, Jesus. He said, "You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who mistreat you. Then you'll be acting like God in heaven. For he makes the sun rise on both the good and the bad people and sends rain for both the righteous and the unrighteous." And King took this and said, probably no admonition of Jesus has been more difficult to follow than the command of love your enemies. Some men have sincerely felt that its actual practice is not possible, that it's impossible to do it, to love your enemies. But far from being a pious injunction of a utopian dreamer, the command to love one's enemies is an absolute necessity for our survival. Love, even for enemies, is the key to the solution of the problems of our world. Jesus is not an impractical idealist. He is a practical realist. And King went on to say, it is lucky that Jesus didn't say we had to like our enemies. Phew. That gives a little bit of breathing room there, doesn't it? A little room to work. He said it's almost impossible to like some people. How can we be affectionate toward a person whose avowed aim is to crush our very being and place innumerable stumbling blocks in our path? How can we like a person who is threatening our children and bombing our homes? That is impossible. But Jesus recognized that love is greater than like. When Jesus bids us to love our enemies, he is speaking of agape, understanding and creative and redemptive love for goodwill for all people. It's that love that makes no distinction between friend and enemy. It's an overflowing love that is purely spontaneous, unmotivated, groundless, and creative. That's a pretty amazing kind of love. And my guess is each and every person here has felt that kind of love flow through you. Spontaneous, unmotivated, groundless, and creative. When this love is lived, it does not allow for partiality and distinctions amongst people, but it says we are all one people, one humanity, everyone. It's easy to round people up into groups and paint them alike with the brush of prejudice or prejudgment. And this is exactly what leads us to dehumanization of another person. It makes it easier to dismiss or to write off instead of doing that hard and challenging work of cultivating a love inside of us that we put into the world. Purely spontaneous, unmotivated, groundless, and creative, cultivated, worked on, tested and tried out. This is the love that we seek to put into the world. Oh, no, I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet.
Give me just a second. I got to apologize a while ago. I didn't give you the real honest answer about the difference in a violin and a fiddle. They're the same thing, just the difference is how you play it and the style of music you're playing. And like right now, I'm retuning most probably classical music with the violin is in standard tuning, which would be G, D, A, E. But on the fiddle, we tune up to A, E, A, E. And then I just dropped this high E down to a C sharp. So I have a open tuning here.
If it wasn't enough that loving outward is what can heal the world, what if loving outward is also what can heal yourself? In the Buddhist sense, the word love or loving kindness means to wish happiness for someone. It's not to be in love, but it's simply to hope wellness and happiness for another person. To love everyone, including those who harm you in the Buddhist tradition, might seem impossible, just like it does over in the Christian tradition, or in our tradition, or in any other tradition that poses such an improbable thing. But wishing others happiness is good for you as well. John Oliver, on his HBO show last week tonight, once miraculously got an interview with the Dalai Lama. And it's a pretty funny matching pairing of the Dalai Lama and John Oliver. He could not quite believe it had happened. And there he was. And one of the questions he asked the Dalai Lama was this. He said, "They hate you. The Chinese, they really hate you. You are a wolf wrapped in monk's robes. What do you do about that?" And the Dalai Lama said, "Yes, whatever they want to say, that's their freedom. I have no negative feelings. I just feel love." Like that. I practice taking others' anger, suspicion, distrust, and then I give them patience, tolerance, and compassion. I practice that. You notice that the Dalai Lama did not say, "I do that all the time. 100%, I nail it, because I'm the Dalai Lama." He said, "I practice that. I practice that." Sounding very much like the Buddha, King said, "Returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, but only light can do that." There's a story of two Tibetan Buddhist monks who had been tortured by the Chinese government and imprisoned, and then after their long imprisonment, they were released, and they decided to leave Tibet, where they were unable to practice their Buddhist religion faithfully. And they hiked over the Himalayas, where the Dalai Lama lived in northern India, a long and difficult journey. And a couple days into their journey, the first monk asked the second monk, "Have you forgiven your captors?" And the second monk replied, "No, I can and will never forgive them." And the first monk simply says, "Then you are still their prisoner." Our hatred, our anger, our hope that others trip and fall down and hurt themselves, these are toxic to our own well-being, to our own bodies, and to our own minds as well. There's an old Korean proverb that says, if you kick a stone in anger, it's your foot you will hurt. It's hard not to be angry sometimes with those who we think have harmed us or want to harm those that we love or harm our world. It's hard not to feel anger, a bitter anger or a righteous anger. Choose which anger works for you. But my guess is, in truth, no anger truly works. Sometimes anger might instigate us to something, but if we stay with it too long, it begins to turn on us. And so we practice and we watch our words and our feelings so that we know how we're running, how our temperature is. I know for myself, when my dog barks, it's like a little thermometer on my well-being. If he barks, usually he barks, and it's fine. I don't care. His name's Hobbs. He barks too much, frankly. He barks a lot. And usually I don't mind. But boy, sometimes that barking makes me so mad. Why then, instead of other times, it has to do with my own well-being and where I am. And so it is good to check. Ralph Waldo Emerson called it a compensation that our anger produces more anger. Just the same way that our love produces more love. The Buddha said anger, with its poisoned source and fevered climax, is murderously sweet. And with that murderously sweetness eventually comes pain to us. So that is the difficulty, that is the hardship, that is the beauty, this idea of compensation, that anger begets anger, darkness begets darkness, and love begets love, and light begets light. It is this way. Love is generative, and hate is generative. So let us, in this new year, proclaim that we are going to generate love. Generate love for ourselves, for those around us, and yes, even for our gosh-darn-dumb-headed, stinking, good-for-nothing enemies. May it be so. Amen. We're going to, you already did that. We're going to close with a song of high hope and aspiration. A song that casts a vision into the world. It's a song by War from 1979. Why can't we be friends? Just why can't we be friends? I'll invite you to rise in body or spirit as we sing our closing hymn. And Jeff's going to play some drums for us. Darin's going to jump in on some fiddle. Paula's going to play for us as well. And you all hopefully are going to sing. Why can't we This congregation comes together around a promise that we make to each other. It's a promise of how we want to be in the world, knowing that we will never get it all right, with a humility that says that maybe we're not right all the time, but yet we can walk together. Will you please join me as we say the covenant of this fellowship together? Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and spirit is this love. This is our agreement, to live together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Into this new year we go. We go together. We'll find ourselves alone at times, but we know that we can always come back together. And when we are not together, we can always know that there is a love that exists, that is always open and accessible to all of us at any time. And we come here to fill up and to see that love lived out loud. May you go into this day, into this hour, into this month, into this year with a love that is bold and courageous and loves out loud.